Hi, Joe here at Willie Cottage. Oh my goodness me. The minute I turn this video on, the dog comes. Right, come on quickly, up you get, before I change my mind. I'm obviously not allowed to do the Iona show without her. Obviously, oh God, don't know where that tongue's been. Right, I'll get on with it. Day 11 Advent. Okay, so I'll just look for it. I've just had it because I had to go and take a picture of it. Iona, enough's enough. Oh, and here comes Cricket. Obviously, I can't have one without the other. Last night, I had all three of them on the sofa with me. And this is just a snuggle chair. There's only enough room for one human bottom. Well, on the edge of the sofa, and an entire dog takes up the rest of it. Right. Okay. Iona, give me some breathing space. Iona, give me some breathing space. Right, I'll have my arm back. Okay. So today... Oh, she's giving me the look. Can you see that look? Right. Today is... There is a label inside it. Okay, so it is merino. This I love this roving. I love dyeing this roving. Okay, so it is merino with twisted silk and linen in there. Now the linen is this gorgeous, shiny fibre that is on there, and it never dyes unless I put it in cold water dye, which defeats the object. But I wanted to give it a speckled look. I wanted you to really enjoy the look of this wool. Now I've got this section that's got this really soft baby blue, and then it's got a creamy champagne sort of base all along it, and just the tiniest little splodges of grey. But on the end of this one and here, there's a slight pink on there, so somebody's got some pink on there somewhere along the line. So I'm just going to spin this up. I think I've got about 20-25 grams, but you should all have 25 grams in your pouches as usual. And I'm really looking forward to doing this one. And this week it's haunted stories, maybe nearly over until I run out of other ideas, but I have pulled out my folklore stories book, so I'm going to be reading from that some old stories, some overseas stories, British stories. Some of them are really old, sort of Norse. But you'll like them. They are good. Some of them are short stories, some of them are longer, and if they're longer then I'll put them on another video the next day to follow one from that. But yeah, so for the next week until next Friday it's folklore stories, and then Christmas week be a mixture of folklore and haunted. I'll see if I can find any Christmas haunted stories. So I hope you enjoy this video. I've got loads of things to get done this afternoon, but I'll have a chat with you about that in a minute. So I'll see you on the other side. Yallery Brown. This story and the green mist were told by the old people and young children who lived in Lincolnshire before the fenlands were drained. I think that Yallery Brown is the most powerful of all English fairy tales. I've heard tell how the bogles and boggarts were main bad in the old times, but I can't rightly say as I've ever seen any of them myself. Not rightly bogles, that is. But I'll tell you about Yallery Brown. If he wasn't a boggart, he was main near it, and I knew him myself. So it's all true, strange and true, I tell you. I was working on the high farm to then, and no but a lad of 16 or maybe 18 years, and my mother and folks dwelt down by the pond yonder in the far end of the village. It had stables, and I could see to, and horses to help with, and the odd jobs to do. The work was hard, but the pay good, and I reckon I was idle scamp, for I couldn't abide hard work. And I looked forward to the weeks to Sunday, when I'd have to walk down home and not go back till darkens. By the green lane I could get to the farm in a matter of 20 minutes, but there used to be a path across the west field yonder by the side of the spinney, and on the past the fox cover and to the rampant, and then I used to go all that way, and it was longer for one thing, and I wasn't ever in a hurry to get back to work, and it was still pleasant like summer nights out on the broad silent fields mid the smell of growing things. Folks said as the spinney was haunted, and for sure I have seen lots of fairy stones and rings and that. along the grass edge, but I never saw nought in the way of horrors and boggarts, yet let alone yallery brown, as I've said before. One Sunday I was walking across the west field, and it was a beautiful July night, warm and still, and the air was full of little sounds, as if the trees and grass were chattering to themselves. And all up to once there came a bit of ahead of me the pitifulest greetings I have ever heard. Sobbing like a bairn spent with fear and near heartbroken, breaking off into a moan, and then rising again in a long whimpering wailing that made me feel sick to hark to it. I was always fond of babbies too, and I began to look everywhere for the poor creature. Must be Sally Barton's, I thought to myself. She was always a flighty thing, and never looked after it. Like as not, she had flaunting about the lanes, and has clean forgotten about the babby. But I looked, and I found nought. Nevertheless, sobbing away was my very ear. So tried and sorrowful that I kept crying out, "Whilst by'n wisht, I'll take you back to your mother if you only hush your greeting." But for all my looking, I couldn't find nought. I keeked it under the hedge by the spinney side, and I clumped over it, and I saw up and down, and by the mid-trees, and through the long grass and weeds. But I only frightened some sleeping birds and stinged my own hands with nettles. I found nought, and I fair gave up at last. So I stood there scratching my head, clean beat with it all, and presently with the whimpering got louder and stronger in the quietness, and I thought I couldn't make out words of some sort. I hearkened with all my ears, and the sorry thing was saying, all mixed up with sobbing, "Oh, the stone, the great big stone. Oh, the stone on top." Naturally, I wondered where the stone might be, and I looked again, and there was the edge of the bottom was a great flat stone, near buried in moles. And I hid in cottage grass and weeds, and one of those stones, as it were, used to the strangers' tables. The strangers danced them at moonlights, and so they were never meddled with. So it was ill luck, you know, to have crossed the tiddly people. However, I fell down onto my knees and knee bones by the stone, and hearkened again, clearer nor ever, but tired and spent with greeting this little thing's sobbing voice. "Oh, oh, the stone on top." I was misleaking to meddle with the thing, but I couldn't stand with the whimpering babby, so I tore like mad at the stone, till I felt it lifting from the mools. And all at once it came with a sigh at the damp earth and the tangled grass and growing things, and there in the hole lay a tiddly little thing on its back, blinking up at the moon and at me. It was no bigger than a year-old brat, but it had a long cotted hair and beard twisted around and round its body, so I couldn't see its clouts. And the hair was all a-yather and shining and silky like a bairn's, but the face was old, as if it were hundreds of years since it was young and smooth. Just a heap of wrinkles and two bright black eyes in mid, set in a lot of shining yellow hair. In the skin was the colour of fresh turned earth in the spring, brown as brown could be, and its bare hands and feet were brown like its face. The greeting had stopped, but the tears were standing on its cheek, and the tiddly little thing looked mazed in the moonshine and in the night air. It was wondering what to do, but by and by it scrambled out of the hole, stood looking about and at myself. I wasn't up to my knee, but it was queerest creature you ever set your eyes on. Brown and yaller all over, yaller and brown as I told you before, and with such a glint in its eyes, and such a wizened face, that it felt feared upon it. For all it was so tiddly and old, the creature's eyes got some used to moonlight, and presently it looked upon my face as bold as it ever was. "Tom," it says, "you're a good lad." And as cool as you could think, it says, "Tom, you're a good lad." And its voice was soft and high and piping like a little bird twittering. I touched my hat and began to think what it was I ought to say. But as I was clemmed with fright, I couldn't open my gob. "Hoits," says the thing again. You needn't be feared of me. You've done me a better turn than you know, my lad. I'll do much for you." I couldn't speak yet, but I thought, Lord, for sure it's a boggle. "No," it said quick as quick. "I'm not a boggle. You best not ask me what I am. Anyways, I'm a good friend of yours." My very knee bones struck, for certainly an ordinary body couldn't have known what I'd been thinking to myself. But it looked so kind and like and spoke so fair, it made bold to get out. A bit of a quavery like. "Might I be asking to know your honour's name?" It says, pulling its beard. "As for that," and it thought a bit. "Aye, I say so. Well, on at last. Yannery Brown, you may call me. Yallery Brown. It's my nature, you see, and for my name it will do as well as any other. Yallery Brown. Tom Yallery Brown's your friend, my lad." "Thank you, master," says I, a quick meek like. "And now," he says, "I'm in a hurry tonight, but tell me quick, what shall I do for you? Will you have a wife? I can give you the rumpiest lass in town. Will you be rich? I'll give you all the gold, as much as you can carry. Or will you have help with your work? Only say the word." I scratched my head. Well, as for a wife, I have no hankering after such, but they're bothersome bodies, and I have a woman folk to home as will mend my clouts. As for gold, that's as may be. For you see, I thought he were talking only, and maybe he couldn't do as much as he said. But for work, there I can't abide work. And if you give me a helping hand in it, I'll thank you." "Stop," he says quickly as lightning. "I'll help you and welcome. But if you ever say that to me, if you ever thank me, do you see, you'll never see me more. Mind you that now. I want no thanks. I'll have no thanks. Do you hear?" He stamped his tiny little feet on earth and looked as wicked as a raging bull. "Mind that now, that great lump as you be," he went on, calming down a bit. "And if I ever need help or need to get into trouble, call on me on it and just say, 'Yallery Brown, come from Mules. I want thee.' And I shall be there with you at once. And now," he says, picking up a dandelion puff, "good night to you, sir." And he blowed it up, and it all came into my eyes and ears. As soon as I could see again, the tiddly creature was gone, and but none for the stone on the end and holes in my feet. I'd have thought I'd been dreaming. Well, I went home to bed, and by the morning I'd heard all forgotten about it. But when I went to work, there was nothing to do. It was all done already. The horses were seen to, the stables cleaned out, everything in its proper place. And I'd done naught to do with it but sit on my hands in my pockets. And so went on day after day, all the work done by Yallery Brown, and better done too than I could have ever done myself. And as if the master gave me more work, I sat down by, and the work did itself, sinking irons on the besom or what not, and to set to, and never had a hand to put them to, or to get through in no time at all. For I never saw Yallery Brown in daylight, only in the darklings, when I've seen him hopping around like a wild wyke without the lantern. To first, it was mighty fine for me. I'd nowt to do and good pay for it. But by and by things began to go artsy-fartsy, as if the work was done for me and it was undone by the other lads. If my buckets were filled, theirs were upset. If my tools were sharpened, theirs were blunted and spoiled. If my horses were clean as daisies, theirs were splashed with muck, and so on, day in and day out. It was always the same. And the lads saw Yallery Brown flitting about of the nights, and they saw things working without hands of the day, and they saw my work was done for me, and theirs undone for them. And naturally they began to look shy upon me, and they wouldn't speak or come near me, and they carried tales to the master, and so things went from bad to worse. For do you see, I could do nothing for myself. The brooms wouldn't stay in my hands, the plough ran away from me, and the hoe kept out my grip. I thought oft as I'd do my own work after all, so as to maybe Yallery Brown could leave me and my neighbours alone. But I couldn't. I could only sit by and look on. And as if the old cold shoulder turned on me, whilst the unnatural thing was meddling with the others and working for me, till last things got so bad, the master gave me the sack. And if he hadn't, I do believe that all the rest of the lads would have sacked him for me, for they swore they'd not stay on the same garth with me. Well, naturally I felt bad. It was a main good place and good pay too. And I was fair mad with Yallery Brown, as he'd got me into so much trouble. So before I knew it, I shook in my fist into the air and called out as loud as I could, "Yallery Brown, come from the mools, thou scamp, I want thee." You'll scarce believe it, but I hardly brung out the words, as I felt something tweaking my leg behind. While I jumped with the smart of it, and I soon looked down, and there was a tiddly thing, his hair shining and his face wrinkled and wicked glinting in his black eyes. I was in a fine rage and should have liked to have kicked him, but it was no good. There wasn't enough of him to get in my boot against. But as I said once before, look here, master, I'll thank you to leave me alone after this, do you hear? I want none of your help, and I'll have nought more to do with you. See now. The horrid thing bracked out with a screeching laugh and pointed his brown finger at me. "Oh, Tom, you thanked me, my lad, and I told you not to. I told you not." "I don't want your help, I tell you," I yelled at him. "I only want to never see you again, and nought more to do with you. You can go." The only thing laughed and screeched and mocked at me, as long as I went on swearing, but as soon as my breath gave out, "Tom, my lad," he says with a grin, "I'll tell you summat, Tom. True's true. I'll never help you again, and call as you will, you'll never see me after today. But I never said I'd leave you alone, Tom, and I never will, my lad. I was nice and I was safe under that stone, Tom. You could do no harm, but you let me out yourself, and you can't put me back again. I would have loved to have been your friend and worked for you if you'd been wise, but since you're no more just but a born fool, I'll give you no more than a born fool's luck. And when all goes arsey-farsey and everything's agree, you'll mind that as that Yallery Brown's doing, though happened you don't see him. Mark my words, you will." And he began to sing and dancing around me like a bairn with his hair yaller and all looking older, not evermore, with his grinning, wrinkled face. "Work as you will, you'll never do as well. Work as you might, you'll never gain out. For harm and mischief, Yallery Brown, you've let out yourself from under the stone." Aye, he said those very words, and they ring in my ears ever since, over and over again, like a bell tolling on the burying. And it was in the burying of my luck, for I never had ever since. However, the imp stood there mocking and grinning at me, chuckling like the old devil's own wicked self. And man, I can rightly mind that he said next, he was all cussing and swearing and calling me misfortune on me. But I was so mazed in fright that I could only stand there shaking all over me and staring down at the horrid thing. I reckon if it had gone on long, I'd have tumbled down in a fit. But by and by, this yaller shining hair, I can't abide a yaller hair since then, rose up in the air, wrapped itself around him, where it looked for all the world like a dandelion puff, and he floated away in the wind over the wall and out of sight, with a panting skirl of his wicked voice and sneering laugh. I tell you, I was near dead with fear. I can't scarcely tell how I ever got home at all, but I did somehow, I suppose. Well, that's all. It's not much of a tale, but it's true, every word of it. And then there's others besides me who've seen Yallery Brown and his known evil tricks. And did it come true, you say? But it did sure. I've worked here and there and turned my hand to this and that, but it's always went agee. And it is all Yallery Brown's doing. The children died, my wife didn't bear it. The beast never fatted, nothing ever did well with me. I'm going old now, and I must end up my days in the house, I reckon. But till I'm dead and buried and happened everwards, There'll be no end to Yellowy Brown's spite at me. And in the day out I hear him saying, whilst I sit here trembling, work as you will, you'll never do well. Work as you might, you'll never gain out. For harm and mischief and Yellowy Brown, you've let yourself from under this stone. So there we go. So it's got a really lovely creamy contrast on this. You can't really see it because I'm starting to lose the light, but you'll see it on the end photo anyway. But it's really lovely to spin up. It's got such a, it's really hard to show you, but there is such a subtle shine through that because of the flax that's in there, or the linen. And what's really good about spinning flax with wool is it has the most gorgeous drape in that when you knit it up. If you use it for shawls or for lovely lacy spun jumpers for the summer. But yeah, or a lovely lightweight jumper that you can use for layering in the winter months. Definitely great with that. But top tip, right, so I've got wool drying on the side here, but I wanted to tell you. Now, because this had different fibres in it, I always find that, especially when it's got the flax on the blend, it does tend to stick a little bit. And sometimes when you buy rovings from people, and it's just because of the process, but not everybody does this tip. I do, but I've got to admit, I didn't do it to start with because I never knew about it. Or it didn't dawn on me, why didn't I think of that before? So when you get a roving from a producer, or if you've dyed one up yourself, you will find that there is an opening. I don't know if you'll be able to see, but can you just make out there's like a line that runs through the centre of your roving. So if you find that and just pull it open, okay, just tease it open, because of the way it's dried and it's been dyed and it's been rinsed and it's been and everything else, it will sort of not felt together, but the fibres will cross over together and it will give it like a tighter feeling. So what you want to do is find your middle section on your roving and just gently tease it open. Then while you're doing that, get your kettle boiling. Boil up your kettle, or if you're like me, you've got a gas hob and you have a top cooker kettle, which means you can have the steam rolling for a bit longer, or even a pot of water. Now you want to get your roving and just gently, about that much away from the top of the kettle, but because you want the steam to actually penetrate into the fibres. And what you'll find is that the fibres will bloom out like they do if you steam set your yarn. They'll bloom out and the fibres will really soften up, and any crossover fibres from the washing and dyeing process will completely relax, which you'll find it's actually easier to work with. So because my fibres have gone from dyeing, drying and probably weighed and straight into a little braid, so all the fibres have all been squashed up while they're in the bags. So top tip, when you get my little mini braids, or if anybody else, and you find that there seems to be a little bit of, oh, I don't want to move sort of feel to the fibres, especially if it's a really fine fibre like a merino 18 micron count or a 21. You shouldn't really have any problem with any other fibres, but if they've been blended with silks and flax and things like that, you might find there's a little bit of stiffness to the fibre onto the roving. So give it a little waft over the top of the steam, about that much away from it, but don't have your fingers too close because it does flipping nip when it gets you. But just like swish it over and top and then bring another piece across and then do that section and just swish it back and forth, and you will feel, once that fibre cools down, you will feel the difference from one area that hasn't been steamed to the other area that's been steamed, and it's so softer and it's a lot bouncier and a lot more flexible and it's moving. Okay, so top tip. And even you guys that are felters out there and you've got a roving that you've bought, not from the big mills and producers like your UK producers where we source our stock. I'm on about your indie dyers, or if you, as I say, if you dyed it yourself and you feel it's got a little bit of rigidity about it, just put it over that steam, and I tell you what, you'll be like, oh my god, why did I never think of this before? So that's my top tip for you today. So what else? I think that's about it really. Live chat tomorrow, Saturday, Instagram. Coffee break usually about noonish, so I do have to pop out first thing in the morning. Hopefully I don't have to wait too long in the queues, but it's going to be pouring down with rain all day tomorrow and on and off for the next 5 days up here in Cumbria. So I will be putting the order over to the post office. I've got an order to Canada to get sent over, and I have a fluff rescue that I'm in the middle of doing now, and that'll be going out tomorrow morning. So I'm talking noonish. So between noon and 12:30 I will be on and doing my live chat. Not quite sure what I'm going to do about that tomorrow. I might do a bit of dyeing and have a natter, because I do have to get some wool dyed up that's been soaking, and I just haven't got a chance to get it dyed up. So I think I'll be doing dyeing tomorrow and just having a bit of chat. And that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed the folk stories that I was reading to you. As I say, that'll be the theme for the rest of this week. I do like them, and they are sort of, these ones in this book are aimed at sort of parents reading to younger kids or sort of things like that. So it's not babish, it's not overtaxing, but I do love a good folk story. They've got the moral behind a story. It's like, don't be too noisy, you never know what'll happen, sort of thing. So yeah, I do enjoy doing those. Look, there she is up there. She's just been hypnotised by the spinning wheel. You couldn't see her, she was behind the camera, and now it's 3 o'clock and she's wanting her dinner, and I've got to go and stick somebody's chicken in the oven before she can have that as well. Anyway, you take care of yourselves. I shall catch you for day 12 tomorrow, which I actually have to go and blend that because I don't have day 12. Oh, I need to go and, I've got the ingredients, so I need to go and rummage around and get that blended up for myself tomorrow. Can't believe I haven't got day 12 Advent. Oh dear, might have to skip a day. Maybe not. Anyway, take care of yourselves. Have a lovely Friday evening. I know I am on the giggle juice. Definitely need it. Had a horrible couple of days. Anyway, take care of yourselves, and I shall see you soon.